Our theme this month has been Seeds of Freedom. And today's talk is entitled, First Things First. We've been talking about the seeds of freedom since mid-January through today, and contained within each of us, there are indeed seeds of freedom that can be planted, can be nurtured, can be tended and grown to produce our marvelous, beautiful, incredible expressions of our unique selves. Those displays of our connection with this creative force in the universe that only wants to express itself by means of us. So the first of those seeds that we've already talked about is that the divine nature is in every person. The universe does not play favorites. It's creative, it's expressive, and Ernest Holmes calls this the thing itself, that the divine nature is expressing by means of each of us. The second of these seeds of freedom is that universal power works for us by working through us. As much as we can believe, we can experience, do, or be, is delivered through us, by means of us, through the power of our belief. And Holmes described that as how this works. The third seed of freedom is that this universal power is impersonal, that scientific natural laws are put into play by our mental work. And that is, there is no limit to our power or to the extent of our thought. There's no mystery in this. It simply does what we direct it to do through the impress of our thought on universal energy. And anybody can do it. And universal energy, God, spirit, divine intelligence, whatever you call that source of your being, always responds. Holmes described this or identified this simply as what it does. So those are the first three chapters of the Science of Mind text. Today, in the last talk in this series, I'm going to talk about chapter 4, which is titled, How to Use It. Because it doesn't matter how we intellectually or esoterically relate to this, it's how we can use it in the living of a positive and life-affirming experience here that makes the difference. What's frequently referred to as where the rubber meets the road. So I've titled this talk, First Things First. How do we germinate these seeds of freedom for our own well-being and harvest them in an ongoing crop of good things, good people, good events, goodwill in our human lives, our human experience. Remembering that we are spiritual beings, we're having a human experience in this plane of existence. There's a reason for that. It's not an accident. We're here on purpose, each of us. And to discover our purpose and to live our purpose and to share our purpose is what each of us gets to do while we're here. So I'd like to propose that a part of this unfolding in each of us is that we begin by reading the directions. Most of you are familiar with the old saying, when all else fails, read the directions. Why not begin by reading the directions? Think how much time, effort, pain, suffering that can prevent. For example, here's a direction worth reading. The principle of life is that there's one mind. That mind is God's mind. That mind is your mind now. Here's another direction worth paying attention to. You can apply the principles of life, in your experiences, including the challenges, the fears, the disappointments that crowd in on you and demand your attention. So today we're going to step right up and take on those demands. Today we're going to address life as it lives through each of us. We're going to put first things first. We're going to make a commitment to read the directions and learn how to use these miraculous gifts that we have, this power, this life-affirming energy, this God-given gift. And it's given upon creation. It's not something we have to earn. It comes with the package. It's how we express it that shows our understanding of the gift. So by putting first things first and reading the directions, one of the things I mean by that is to stay attentive to what you do. Stay attentive to what you choose or want in your life, desire in your life, not what you don't want. By putting things first and reading the directions, I mean using all the resources available to you in this incredible universe, because they're endless. They're boundless. And by putting things first and reading the directions, I mean paying attention to what works. So here's the first set of directions. God is all there is. God is the idea of life, the role model. There are many different names. I encourage my students to make a list of the names by which you think of this concept of the creative energy, the universal source, the divine intelligence, the creative spirit. And each day you can add to that list. God doesn't care what you call it, just that you recognize that it's there for you and with you. So here are some more names that you can use for the omnipotent, which is all powerful, for the omnipresent, which is everywhere, equally present all the time, to the omniscient, which means that it is expressing its power in a logical and scientific way. So how many more can you think of? Make a note each time you hear something that really speaks to you from the standpoint of an all-encompassing life. So I encourage you in your spiritual practices to work with those different names and to use them. For one thing, you get over thinking that there is an anthropomorphic God and that's the only expression of this universal source there is. Because we actually think in word pictures. So when you are able to come up with different identifications for this source of being, it begins to open up your consciousness to what you hear me talk about as boundless or infinite being. You are letting go of that limited concept of what may previously have been in your consciousness. Become aware of the vast, extensive, unlimited concepts that you can have of God when you actually pay attention to it. So here's our starting position. Here's what we put first. I so believe that God is all there is that I live my life filled with this realization. I live my life filled with this realization. Talk about having a partner in love always with you because it's in you. The next set of directions is universal mind, God, spirit, universal intelligence, accepts everything we feed it. It cannot say no. I want to read to you, and many of you have heard this before, right here in this very room, as a matter of fact, what Dr. Holmes says so well about the fact that this universal mind accepts everything we feed it. Science of Mind textbook. What page?
152.
52. Oh, you're close. You got the right ending. Page 52. This is in the chapter on how to use it, the thing itself, which is that God is all there is. So here's what he says. It has been proved that by thinking correctly and by a conscious mental use of the law of mind, we can cause it to do definite things for us, through us. By conscious thinking, we give conscious direction to it, and it responds to our advance along the line of our conscious or subjective direction. It must and will respond to all persons because it's law. It's universal law, and law is no respecter of persons. We're surrounded by an intelligent force and substance from which all things come, ready and willing to take form through the impulse of our creative belief, which is that it's done unto us as we believe. We can use it correctly only as we understand and use it according to its nature. So now here's the punchline. Hence it follows that if we believe that it will not work, it really works by appearing not to work. When we believe that it cannot and will not, then according to the principle, it does not. But when it does not, it still does. Only it does according to our belief that it will not. I wonder how many times he edited that before it really said clearly what he meant. But do you get the drift there? That it's always working in your favor, even when you are negative. It supports your negativity. So the third set of directions are these. I believe in the power of my thought. I believe I can direct universal mind and cause the events of my life. Now that's a very powerful statement. So personally, I want to be sure that I am directing my thoughts in a positive fashion, because I recognize that there is as much power to take them in a negative direction as there is in a positive direction, only I get to decide which direction I want them to go. So let me review these three directions now. God is all there is, vast, extensive, unlimited. I live my life filled with this realization. Number 2, Spirit accepts everything. We think into universal mind. It cannot say no. I think into universal mind thoughts of good, prosperity, love, happiness, health, peace. And then number 3, this creative energy is the source and the recipient of my thoughts. I think only those thoughts that bring me the greatest good at no one else's expense. When our thoughts, ideas, intentions, actions are good, then there can be no harm, no foul, and no threat to anyone else. We do not take from anyone else that which we receive into our lives. We accept for ourselves as can anyone who so chooses. When you begin to get a concept of the vastness of the cosmos and all that is contained within it, then you begin to understand that accepting prosperity into your life in whatever form, from financial through loving relationships, through creative work and physical health, you're not taking that away from any other spiritual being having a human experience. You're sharing it with the universe, where there is an endless supply. So now we've laid the groundwork. God is all there is. I live my life filled with this realization. Universal mind accepts everything I give it. I know I can direct universal mind with my thoughts to direct the events of my life. And please note I said my life, not somebody else's. We are each in charge of ourselves, and we accept that for others. You see, you are creating your life in every moment. The more you practice what you choose for that to be, the better it becomes. Makes sense. Here are 6 practical ways to use this power that's available to you. First of all, do your prayer treatment work every day. Do it the first thing in the morning, or do it the last thing at night, or do it both times. But develop a practice of doing. You eat every day. You breathe every day. Most of us sleep sometime in that 24-hour continuum. This is simply including that prayer treatment work along with the other necessities of your life, because it indeed is. Practical application number 2, rather than giving your thoughts to your problem, give them where? To your solution. Number 3 is give up judging the rest of the world. Judging others is how we avoid self-evaluation. Judging others is attempting to build ourselves up by tearing someone else down or something else down. The moment we begin to see through the eyes of wisdom and love, judgment and accusation simply dissolve. They disappear because they're stripped of any meaning within our own consciousness. We attract events and people into our lives. When you love yourself, you will attract things and people who support you and grow you and reflect that love. What about the energy that's been wasted in judgment and accusation in the past? Well, that energy is now yours to use in positive and meaningful ways in your own life experience. It's what I've heard referred to as leaking energy, that we're actually diluting our energy with judgment and accusation. It's leaking out of us, where in the positive and meaningful events of our lives, we're actually building a greater reserve of energy. A 4th way to practically apply the power of the universe to improving your life is to give up your story, your drama, yesterday's news. Recognizing that continuing to tell our story keeps us focused on the past or the negative. And recognize the impact on you when you buy into anyone else's story. It may be someone in our teaching even, or someone who's still working through his or her own stuff. Or it may be someone who has devoted his or her life to staying stuck in their own stuff. Remember what we talked about that Dennis Merritt Jones says? That's my story and it's sticking to me. That sometimes it becomes a part of us by our choice, not by requirement. But we've been in it so long, we wear it like a mantle. You can still love others, friends, relatives, and honor them. But avoid wallowing with them because it gets on you. And these kinds of things are like lack and loss and illness and stress. One of the things that we talk about in our classes is that people who are trained in the art and science of doing spiritual mind treatment are trained to always stay in the truth of you, even though in the moment there is the appearance of negativity, perhaps in the form of lack, perhaps in the form of health, perhaps in the form of prosperity. But the practitioner knows that at the core of your being, you are perfect, whole, and complete, and they know that for you, they see that for you. To the extent that if the practitioner buys into your story, they have lost their effectiveness to support you in prayer. They can be a wonderful friend, they can be a wonderful relative, they can be a wonderful neighbor and serve you through the experience you're having. But the ultimate for each of us is to have someone standing in prayer for us who knows the truth of us even when we don't know it for ourselves. And to work with us to come back into the light, because we haven't lost it. But to support us in returning to that. That's that positive thinking that the practitioner holds in mind for each of us. Not in place of our doing it for ourselves, but supporting us as we come back into that realization. And number 6 is you need to think about what you think about. You need to think about what you think about. I have to tell you, folks, this is a biggie. This is a BGO. Those of you who've been around for a while, remember what BGO stands for? A blinding glimpse of the obvious. A BGO. Remember, you're involved in mind treatment all the time. You're either involved in world mind treatment or spiritual mind treatment. You see the difference? When you're focused on what the world is doing to you out there, it looks a whole lot different than when you are directing your thought along a positive vein of thinking toward the unfolding of an intention. Now I am directing my life as opposed to being bombarded from the collective consciousness out there that is very scattered, that is very unmindful at times, as we have seen in a variety of ways in the way the human experience expresses. So get firmly in your mind that as I do spiritual mind treatment, it is always for my highest and best good at no one else's expense. Reverend Lloyd Strom, one of my teachers, used to say this: the thing to do is to pray first, then act out of inspiration. And that's instead of acting first out of desperation and then praying to undo it. You see the difference? Look at the pain we eliminate when we pray first out of inspiration, as opposed to acting first out of desperation. We can think from the condition we want to be rid of, or we can think from the truth, which is what we expect to see unfolding in our life. We can bounce around in the future what-ifs, or we can stay in the present moment, where life is always unfolding. We can react to past experiences, or we can think in the now moment, which is where our power is. The only value in yesterday is in seeing it through what you know now. Old story, I probably told it before, but Dennis the Menace of cartoon fame once said, "Oh, to be 3 again and know what I know now." And just as an aside, he was 5 when he said that. You know, sometimes you see a movie more than once, or read a book more than once, but you don't confine yourself only to that one movie or book. In fact, the value in revisiting something like that is in finding something new in it that you missed the first time through. So let the past serve you, not haunt you. Let the future unfold from the seeds of freedom you plant today. They can't grow until you plant them. You can only take that action in the present. Wayne Dyer used to say, you can never should have done anything. Think about that. So those are 6 practical ways to use the power available to you. Just as an aside, I want to share with you a Super Soul Sunday segment that I DVR'd from last week. Well, Oprah talking to Dr. Christiane Northrup. You've heard of her.
Yes.
She is a medical doctor by profession. And she is as science of mind as any person I have ever heard speak. And she talks about aging. She talks about it's inevitable to grow older, but it's an option to age. And she talks about how that affects the very cells of your body. You know, we talk about this more and more now that we can track these kinds of things. So we're hearing this from so many different sources that how we think and the self-image that we develop as a spiritual being having a human experience is creating a whole different way of living here in this plane of existence. She talks about studies that have been done of people whose chronological age was in the 80s and 90s and whose biological age, when they read their cells, is in the 20s. Whoa! This is new, big stuff. But you see, these are the doors that we're opening now as we become accepting of a new way to think. And to believe that, and to act on that, and to go get the 5-pound weights and start exercising, and energizing those cells, and nurturing those cells, so that they can stand with you in your power. Because this is the effect. What you see in the physical body is the effect. What you think is the cause. So, and then to practice, practice, practice. Manly Hall, one of the great teachers of the science of mind, once said this of Ernest Holmes. He said he knew how to get this idea of the inner journey, which has been taught down through the ages in almost all religions and philosophies. Holmes figured out how to get it out of his head and into his life. So this is what sets science of mind apart from other metaphysical movements. This is what separates science of mind from other New Thought concepts. We can invoke these practical applications, these ways to use it, in our daily life. So this will be on the recording. You can go to YouTube and listen to it so that you get the page numbers. These are some references of how to use this life principle. Ways to fill your mind with an expectancy of good. Page 150 in the textbook, Universal Laws Governing Prayer. Page 475, When We Are Strong and the Word of Power. And then page 534, which is a meditation on my atmosphere and my good is complete. And know that when that you are using the principle of life when you listen with your heart. Emma Curtis Hopkins, the author of the Gospel series in Spiritual Science, once said, our heart must agree with our lips in order for our words to have power. Do you hear that alignment of being? Our heart must agree with our lips in order for our words to have power. So this is the practical application of first things first, because believing is a feeling of the heart. Believing means, I am like that. Well, sometimes old fears can surface in us. And we start to think, it's too late for me. I'm too old. I'm too set in my ways. I'm under too much pressure or influence of the outside world. Occasionally I've heard people say, if only I were younger, I could do this. Or if I were in a different situation, I would do better. Or if I'd known then what I know now, I'd have done it differently. But here's the real question. What are you doing now with what you know now? Because that's all that really matters. Bless where you are. Bless what's happening to you, and know for yourself that if every other person in the world was miserable today, there's one who isn't. And that's you. That's you because you are in charge of you. And remember that to bless is to direct constructive thought. Constructive thought. And to give thanks in all things. For remember, your gratitude is your awareness that you have taken right action. So spend some time each day thinking how it feels when the thing you desire is 100% in your life. Not wishing for it, but thinking how it feels right here and now. How does that feel when it's 100% in your life? Think about how you are when the thing you desire most. Think about how you are when the thing you desire most is in your life. Think about the thoughts you think then. Think about the plans that you're carrying out then. Think about what is being celebrated. It's like projecting yourself into that, except you're bringing it into your now. So you're seeing it, you're feeling it, you're tasting it, you're hearing it, you're experiencing it. And know that this desire is whole and perfect and complete in the mind of God. Know that it's ready to come forth in your life. That it's ready now. It's already so in spirit, in universal consciousness right now. If you can conceive it, it's because it already exists in universal mind. And if you can conceive it in your experience, you can achieve it in your experience. Thought into form. So put first things first in your thoughts. Put first things first in your ideas. Put first things first in your intentions and your activities. Fill your mind and your actions with an expectancy of good. This is how we use God's gifts to us. And in so doing, we become the best we can be, which is all we can do, is to be the best we can be. The unique and individualized essence that we are. This is how we grow those seeds of freedom into the fruits of life, our life. And so it is.